My husband constantly touches my body and genitals even when he knows I'm uncomfortable. My 31F husband 42M constantly touches my breasts body even when he can tell I'm uncomfortable. I will admit that I have some significant intimacy issues. As a child, I experienced some abuse and have never been a very physical person as a result. I struggle with PTSD and major depression, which has me prescribed several medications that further lower my sex drive. My husband, on the other hand, is very physically affectionate with a higher drive. Most weekend mornings he will cuddle up behind me and place his hands under my clothing, either on my bare breasts or bare butt. He used to cup my vulva, but I have asked him to please not do that because it causes a sense of fear. After many times telling him this, he stopped touching there. But now every time he cuddles up behind me, I get very anxious about where he's touching. I've asked him to at least keep it to just my breasts because that's less anxiety-inducing. Most the time he does, but sometimes he still rubs my butt and inches toward my vagina if I don't stop him. If I tell him not to, he will stop for a few weeks and then go back to it. He can tell I tense up because he will repeatedly ask if I'm okay with this, as he touches, and will stop if I say no. He's a really great husband other than this. He's an amazing father, hard worker, and honestly my best friend. I'm just so scared when he touches me unexpectedly. It's completely destroying our sex life. I am working through individual therapy slowly. I just started, so we haven't gotten to my marriage issues yet. I love him. I know sex is critical to a marriage and I want to make him happy. This is just leading to resentment, fear and anger. I'm now considering divorce. Editing to add the following information. Some people were wondering if I knew about this the whole relationship. In some ways, yes. I knew he had a high drive and a propensity to touch a lot. At the beginning of our relationship, I told him about my history of childhood abuse, physical and sexual, and neglect. It didn't make me quite as fearful until about 6 years ago. I gave birth and had some complications that led to pain. I also started having some significant health troubles that made me very tired and diminished my libido. This is when this issue started becoming a problem. I have talked to him many times about it. I have explained it brings up trauma. I have asked that he allow me the opportunity to be in control of when we have sex sometimes. We have never gone longer than about a month, unless I had just had a baby, and usually still have sex once a week or so. I usually have to take something like Ativan or drink alcohol to relax, and I know that's probably not healthy. Why haven't we already divorced? Well, because for a long time I had hope that we could get things back to the way they were in the beginning. I hoped by starting therapy for myself, I could get to where I wasn't scared anymore. When things were good, they were very good. We were best friends. We also have children. He is the breadwinner. I don't have any family support and very little financial resources to leave. But I am looking into options. He has no respect for your clearly stated and repeated boundaries. He is getting pleasure from violating your boundaries. He is consistently placing his own pleasure above the pain it causes you when he violates your boundaries. He knows he is doing this. He is not a good guy and he is enjoying hurting you. He does not care about your feelings. Please leave him now. I'm glad you're considering divorce. Because look at what you're saying, he's really a great husband, except daily when he violates my sexual boundaries even though he knows I'm an abuse survivor. You've stated that you're not comfortable and he's acknowledged that, but he's choosing to not respect your boundaries in the hope that you'll change your mind this time. Tell him it makes you very uncomfortable and he has to stop. Call it like it is when you tell him. I have asked you to stop numerous times before. If you continue, it will be while knowing that this is against my will and you are sexually assaulting me. I'm suggesting this as a last-ditch effort, but I think you have enough validation to leave him. He doesn't respect you and he has shown no consideration for how his actions continuously bring up past traumas for you. That's sexual assault. He needs to respect you. The intense feeling of violation when you repeatedly tell someone to stop doing something like this and they continue is something that haunts you for time after. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I don't understand why it isn't crystal clear that sometimes you just don't want to be touched that way and that it is indeed intrusive and violating. Individual therapy isn't going to help you when the problem is that your entitled asshole of a husband sexually assaults you on the regular. Your husband does not respect you. Your husband knows your boundaries and does not care. Your husband is repeatedly assaulting you, again, because he knows you don't like it and does it anyway. Your husband does not care about your consent. You don't feel safe because you are not safe. You are sharing your bed with a predator. Your husband is getting turned on while he knows you are cringing in fear. Your husband is not a great guy. This is assault. He's intentionally doing things he knows makes you uncomfortable. He's not respecting your boundaries. He's intentionally pushing you to do things you aren't comfortable. I would also consider divorce over this. You absolutely need someone who respects your body and your boundaries unconditionally. 'Cause he's a piece of shit. Simply put. I completely agree with the flow of these replies. But I was married to a woman who didn't like to be touched. So I didn't. In the end the relationship fell apart, not over a lack of sex but a lack of closeness and intimacy. Of course she shouldn't be touched if she doesn't like it. But that may in the end mean they are fundamentally incompatible people. This gave me chills. If he was a good man, he wouldn't want to touch you in a way that scared you. This isn't like doing the dishes really well after a talk and then getting lazy again. He's choosing to touch you in a scary way he knows is scary, and only stops doing it long enough to make you want to stay with him. My husband is a very touchy and sexual person, and I also have trauma and PTSD from childhood abuse and abusive relationship. My husband is always respectful of my boundaries and never pushes or continues to touch me in ways that trigger me. Your husband is disrespecting and ignoring your boundaries around sex, which is 10,000% not okay. You deserve to feel safe and comfortable cuddling your partner and being close with him if that's what you desire. His pushing of your boundaries is wrong. Okay, so I am that kind of man who likes touching my wife with no sex intentions, and a very tactical person, but in my case she really likes it. Whereas I would never do that to my ex-wife for instance, because every woman are different. Now, the way you feel about it determines the situation, and in your situation, it clearly does not feel right. You feel uncomfortable, scared. It breaks the happiness that you have with your husband, especially knowing your past. Really talk him through, and if he continues, consider indeed divorcing because as a woman you should never feel unsafe, uncomfortable or scary with your husband. Hope things will be fine for you, friend. I think you guys are just incompatible. Being high libido with your partner being low libido is so demoralizing. One time a week is not enough for high libido people. Resentment just builds and it never ends well. Yeah, you should go. You clearly have differences. You need to get a divorce. It's not gonna change and he will eventually resent you. It's unwanted, so it's sexual assault. I would suggest calling your local women's support services. They often have crisis hotlines that have great advice, options and emotional support. You matter. It sounds like he's trying to initiate sex. I don't read this as sinister behavior. He's asking if what he's doing is okay, stopping when told to, etc. If you can't stand your husband touching you, then you should divorce. Also a survivor of abuse as a child. It sucks. These are things we must work past though. When they interfere with our relationships years later, that means more work must be done. It really reads as though you weren't ready for the regular intimacy of marriage and got into it before coming to a more solid place yourself. Maybe you can sit him aside and make it very clear to him how it makes you feel. I don't consider what he is doing as abuse, as some others have stated. But the intimacy he longs for to share with you may just not be something you're capable of giving. Maybe you're incompatible in that way. You have explicitly communicated to him that the touching makes you uncomfortable, but he ignored your boundaries and decided to make you feel uncomfortable anyway. It doesn't matter how nice he is in other aspects of your life, it doesn't make what he did any less serious. And just because he's your husband, it doesn't make him any more entitled to your body than a stranger. Whether it's a husband or stranger, it's still sexual assault, so please don't downplay your experience, op. This is horrifying. Your husband's disgusting. I have no advice except leave. Yes, indeed. From a male's perspective I can see how it can feel that way because I think we all do it. It's become a natural response. I will cup her breasts or touch her bum in bed and she will touch me also. Sometimes I can tell it's not the right time, so I stop, and sometimes she moves my hand away but she also moves my hand towards her as well, so it's very difficult to judge. I'd speak to him in an ultimatum situation first before you go through with it. Have you tried going to therapy together? I know it is really hard to open up and be vulnerable around people, and there could be added pressure because he's your husband, but I think he truly does not understand that what he is doing is wrong and how it's affecting you. Therapy might help that. If not, then yeah, you might need to divorce. First off, I want you to know you are entirely valid in not wanting your husband to touch you like that, and that's really all that matters. It's bothersome that he basically ignores you over and over no matter how many times you say to stop. I know you have told him to stop many times, but I think you need to frame it very seriously. He should know that it bothers you to such a degree that it makes you anxious and ruins any type of want you may have to be intimate with him. If he can't get it through his head, then it doesn't matter how great he is in other aspects of the relationship. One of the most comforting places in the world should be in your partner's arms, and instead he has made it just about as uncomfortable for you as possible. You should tell him so too. Good luck. It probably best to reconsider your relationship if you're not comfortable with this, then you should not be with someone that will do this. You need to divorce him. You don't like to be touched. His language of love is touching. No one will be happy in this marriage. How the fuck do you guys get this old and this far into a relationship without realizing things like this? I have no idea why people like you, with so many problems, decide to get married in the first place. Do you think any normal guy will be happy in a marriage like this? I suggest you do get a divorce and don't consider dating until you've worked through your issues, or if you have to, date asexual guys. He's great in every outwardly way, so other than the sexual assaults he repeatedly subjects me to, life is good. He puts up a great front so people like him and wouldn't believe me I told them he was abusing me. But I just wish he'd take no for an answer and leave me alone, and I want to avoid drama in my home when my own husband doesn't respect my words or bodily autonomy when I say no. My interpretation of what you've written here. It might be harsh, but I don't think it's inaccurate, and maybe you need to wake up a bit more to realize divorce is exactly the right call here. That's pretty disgusting. Leave him. Why don't you just share this post with him and talk about it? You clearly love him, but he's having trouble relating. He's turned on and is trying to show you physically. My girlfriend does this to me all the time, and I always explain to her that when it's out of the blue I feel vulnerable and not turned on. She understands but sometimes mistakes it as I'm not attracted to her. Some people who haven't been sexually abused need to know how you feel in the moment and not just a general "I don't like this or that." Body language is hard to master with a victim, but as a victim you need to share your day-to-day, moment-to-moment feelings more. I have been dating around recently, and one of the most interesting topics is about sex before marriage, when I do get a chance to date someone who actually is fine with discussing that as a convo topic. Many girls don't explore their partners sexually before jumping into marriage. After reading this post I am wondering if this was one of those relationships. Did you both not figure this out before marriage, or did your sensitivities change after marriage? I broke up with someone like this. Grabbed me inappropriately at work despite me telling them it's not okay. Zero regrets. If someone can't respect your boundaries, then you are justified in what decisions you make. He shouldn't be asking you if you're okay with it when you've told him repeatedly that you're not. You've laid out your boundaries and he's obviously not respecting that, and he's now purposefully making you uncomfortable. If you're not able to just divorce him, then at least tell him that this is so serious for you that you are considering it. Maybe go to counseling together and hopefully he can finally understand the damage he's doing. This great man is working to destroy your boundaries. He may think he is doing this for you. She's just afraid and I can make it go away. But it isn't likely because it obviously isn't going away. It is more likely he wants your boundaries to come down for him and his sexual priorities and not yours. You should feel safe. You should not be in fear if your husband touches you. His inability to keep to the boundaries is a good reason for divorce. He can be an amazing dad from another house while you take the time to figure out how you want to move forward with your sexuality. What about individual therapy and couples therapy at the same time? This may be an unpopular opinion, but it's my opinion, and you came here for it, so I'm gonna say it anyway. I understand the problem that you have, but you chose to marry this man, who is clearly lacking physical affection and trying to seek it from his wife. I just can't see him as the problem. It seems like you're the one with the issues that you need to work out. If I were him, and heard that you were considering divorcing me for trying to cuddle with you, I would be devastated. I'm not trying to come at no survivors, honestly not. Downvote away. Speaking from experience, you and your husband can survive this and come out stronger on the other side. But it will require open communication, patience, and work from both sides. Intimacy is a key component to a happy marriage. Both should see a therapist not because it's your problem, but because it's relationship matter. The age gap location flag location flag location flag. That's really troubling behavior, especially as he knows about your past and the serious effects his behavior has on you. He either has no understanding of your feelings and isn't interested in trying to, or is purposely ignoring them. Have you considered couples therapy? A therapist may be able to help him understand where you're coming from better so he can really see how negatively him ignoring you affects your mental health. If he continues after that, you've given him all the chances and more than you could have to allow him to learn and grow. You deserve to be with someone who respects your boundaries and cares about your mental well-being. Did he know your trauma history when you got together? I'm not trying to be a douche, but I'd ask for a divorce ASAP. The thought of feeling unsafe next to the person who should be keeping me safe. It's all ass backwards. It sucks during the initial separation, but a year from now you'll be happier and much more content. Good luck. Your husband sounds like a friggin' weirdo too, which doesn't help. It's usually the people with the most polite, outgoing personalities that are the most fucked up. I live by the adage, silence is better than shit. Good luck to you. I'm going to copy a comment I wrote on another post that was very similar. In this context, my ex wouldn't stop smacking, touching, and grabbing my ass and breasts despite me telling him to stop every single time. I had this issue with an ex and he'd use the same excuses of, "But you're so hot," and, "It's a compliment," or, "It's funny." He stopped altogether when I finally smacked his hand away from me and said, "Touching me in a sexual way when I don't want it is sexual assault." He was completely taken aback, but understood after I repeated myself a few different ways. It's not his body and he doesn't get to do whatever he wants with it. If he touches you sexually and you don't like it, didn't consent to it, it is sexual assault. Period. Bring him to therapy with you maybe. Possibly he just doesn't see how this is affecting you mentally and thinks it's a way to lead to sex. Show him how bad the situation is and how you both can move forward. Tell him you just can't deal with it anymore and make him learn. I wouldn't say to jump to divorce right away, but to actually have a serious talk. And not just, "It makes me uncomfortable," tell him it triggers a lot of bad memories to you. That you tense up. That you get transported to a time where you were sexually abused. If you think it's not worth it, then yeah. Divorce him. You should never tolerate such a thing and think of your mental health. Girl, you need to pack your bags and run. Don't tell him you're leaving. Just go quietly. "I'm so sorry to hear you're living with this. I haven't been through what you have, but even so I would be really hurt and offended if I had asked my partner not to do this and they kept on. Your husband isn't an idiot, he just isn't taking your feelings seriously. That's awful. Can you imagine treating someone you love that way? Perhaps you could have a joint session with a marriage counselor, and have them try to figure out how to communicate the gravity of this to him. It's perfectly reasonable to consider divorce. His behavior is unacceptable. Not only is it disrespectful and verging on abusive, it is not loving. He's supposed to love you and want you to be comfortable. Consent is not strictly verbal. When you say that he'll stop if you tell him, "No, that's good," but then you say that he does this even when you're obviously uncomfortable, that's not okay. You say it took many times of telling him not to cup your vulva to get him to stop, this is also a red flag. He should have stopped immediately. You should not have to compromise anything in a healthy relationship. My advice is to be bold, and when you're visibly uncomfortable, make it official and tell him, "No." Say that you don't consent to his touching, and if he doesn't accept that, then you need to get out. Verbal confirmation of not consenting is impossible to ignore or excuse away. From my own experience with so it might not apply to you, but things really turned around when we started communicating about everything. What we like, dislike, what we want, when we want it. It wasn't easy at first, and it took some time to get to a place where we could really open up. But it has helped us a lot. So maybe talk to your husband about opening more communication around sex. Get to a point where you can both openly talk and ask if the other is in the mood, etc. Hopefully that can help him respect your boundaries, as well as help you realize exactly what you do and don't want and need from him, as it has for me. Best of luck to both of you, heart. I will never blame a victim of assault and I am proud of you for even a semblance of good life. I think this is above Reddit's pay grade. Therapy is your best bet and if you feel like you need to divorce then it's up to you.